Hello friends, in this video we're going to look at this set of bookshelf speakers that I've accumulated. These all came from thrift stores and I bought each pair for $10 or less. I'm calling these bookshelf speakers even though some of them aren't technically that. We'll just go through them real quick. JBL Control 1. JBL is one of the high-end speaker brands. Iowa, these are kind of satellite speakers for some type of CD player amplifier system. These are Athena, which are part of a set for home theater use. These are Sony. Have this strange form factor that's, to give you a size comparison, about a little bigger than my hand. I bought these just recently for the idea that I think they're designed to go under a couch as surround speakers, or at least that's what I bought them for. That's what the low profile is all about, I think. We've got its mate and the mates for those other ones, as well as separated on the side this pair of Sony satellite speakers. This one's kind of scruffy, but I've been seeing a lot of these at thrift stores in the $3 and $5 range. I think these came in large sets of like 4 each with a center speaker and a subwoofer, so that's why they're plentiful. So we're going to listen to some of those. Honestly, my own experience as a viewer on YouTube has been that the listening tests aren't worth a whole lot to the viewer. And the problem is that you don't know how good the microphone is that you're working with, and then it's also ultimately going to be playing through the system that you're watching the video on, which may or may not be a good system, but in any case it colors the audio that you hear. I'm going to use the built-in microphone on this camera, which I've had good luck with, but certainly isn't any kind of audiophile grade or anything. So rather than spend a lot of time letting you compare one to the other, I'll just give you a brief blast of each one and kind of tell you what my thoughts are on it. And all of these I'm going to be using through this subwoofer that I've got. This is from Theater Research. It's probably at least 20 years old. This is kind of a low-end model. They sold some of the early home entertainment center systems at kind of a budget price. So this isn't any kind of champion, but it has one feature that I haven't seen elsewhere that's pretty compelling, which is it has a built-in crossover that lets you hook up the satellite speakers directly. So that's perfect for my application where I want to put in a stereo signal, have the crossover built into the subwoofer, bring some wires up here, and listen to satellite speakers or bookshelf speakers in my lab setting. And what I've already done in advance of this is kind of make a comparison of all these under these conditions and see what sounds best. To start with, I've got some of these speakers set up on this speaker selector. Got 3 different sets that go on there. I've got more to show you than that, but we'll start with 3. Get some music going and see what it sounds like. So to give you an idea of the impact of the subwoofer here, this is the subwoofer only with none of the other speakers connected. You can tell that it sounds muffled, but bass is coming through. So I think that's okay for what it's intended to be, which is to deliver the low frequencies only. And the fact that I'm using smaller bookshelf speakers in conjunction with a bigger subwoofer under my workshop table is something that's kind of a good combination, I think, for my purposes of it doesn't take up a lot of space, it doesn't get in the way, and yet the combined sound is pretty good. So now let's add in the JBL speakers. So my own impression of those is that it sounds real good. We've got kind of crisp highs, we've got lows that are coming through, and I think that's a pretty good combination here. Now just to switch in midstream, I'm going to crank the volume back up again a little. Take out the JBLs. This is the Iowa speakers. Here's the other one with the cover removed to give you an idea. So this is larger and a three-way speaker, so in some ways that has an advantage. So with the Iowa speakers, they sound pretty good overall, although it's kind of on the boomy side. I think what's going on is that the woofer element here, which is really only about 5 inches, is probably overlapping a little bit with the subwoofer, even though the crossover network should minimize their impact. But I think that's where the boom is coming from, is a little bit too much bass in just whatever that overlap period is between the subwoofer and the Iowas. So in this case, the JBL speakers actually sounded better to me. Let's take out the Iowa. We'll put in, I've got these Sony speakers. Now I don't know if that comes through clearly on the video, but this is a real step down in audio quality. Kind of what I think is happening is we've got a gap between the subwoofer and these speakers, and also these are just plain not great speakers. We'll stop the music for a second. These have some of the hallmarks of not so great speakers. One is a kind of a thin plastic shell. One of the good things about these that's kind of a positive sign but doesn't prove too much is that they have speaker connectors rather than a built-in cord. The Iowas have a built-in cord, which actually is kind of convenience in a way, but generally speaking it's a sign of a inexpensive speaker that was sold as part of a larger system. So these don't sound too good. I paid $4 a piece for them. They may eventually end up under my couch as I planned, or it may be that, you know, they go elsewhere. But they have a kind of a cheesy sound that's really reminds me of the old AM transistor radios from when I was a kid, you know, which was maybe about the size of your hand and didn't sound good. We were delighted to have one at the time, but it has that sort of particular not so great sound about it. I think these are lacking in highs and lows, which is probably where that comes from. Now I've replaced the couch speakers with these little cube speakers. For visual comparison, you can see the height is about the same. You know, these could also go under the couch, and obviously even better in that sense for being smaller, but you know, space under the couch isn't really a big issue. But in particular, our concern here is the sound, so let's give that a try. So to my ears, this is still a little better than what we had out of the couch speakers. So that tells me that the couch speakers really don't have a life, except that I might take them apart for fun to see what's going on in there. But really these have that same sort of cheesy sound that the couch speakers had, except maybe just a little slightly better. So I think these are pretty good for what they are, but you know, they're very inexpensive, and they sound okay for the size, but they're just not really all that great. They're noticeably not as good as the JBL that I started with, or the Iowa. I ended up pulling the lid off of this one as an experiment. Usually good speakers have a front face that will pull off directly. Turns out these weren't really designed to be pulled off, but I was able to do that without too much damage. Let's see if I can do it again with one hand. So these have a, you can see these kind of ridge things here that go into the plastic. They put some sort of lightweight adhesive in there that kind of keeps those together. You can see the main driver element here. And what's a little harder to see, this is a porthole. So I'm going to say this is a bass reflex design. And we've got this little thing here that looks like what must be a tweeter. So what you've got here actually is kind of a clever design in a way, which is a bass reflex two-way system, but you know, again, I'm not really hearing it as far as audio quality goes. And I think the way this is working out is maybe these can be quite loud, they can deliver a lot of power, but as far as quality and frequency range go, maybe they're lacking. So for fun, I'll get our music going again. We'll turn up the power on the audio and see what happens. And I may cut this on the video editing so it doesn't blast you all. So listen more for you know, distortion more than volume. So here we go. So my perception of that was kind of bad speakers louder, not really an improvement. In fact, maybe making it worse. I didn't actually hear any newer distortion. I just heard the kind of the same not so great sound, but louder. So here I've got all the speakers cut out except for the subwoofer. I'm going to turn on the Athenas here, which is A on the selector. So that sounds pretty solid, doesn't sound boomy. Got some fairly clear highs there. Let's compare that to the JBL. So I'll take out the Athena, got just the subwoofer, put in the JBL. Back to the Athena. Here's the JBL and Athena together. With this speaker selector I can actually turn on two pairs at once. So we'll run our song back here. Just JBL. Just Athena. Song credit here, this is called Who's Using Who by the Mini Vandals. So to give you my impression, the Athena and the JBL were the best. They're pretty comparable as far as sound quality goes. I've noticed on the JBL they have kind of a real crisp high that kind of seems a little more detailed. And considering all this, they're my favorite so far. One of the things to notice about these, you can't tell this at home, but these Athenas are made out of some very thick and hard plastic. It's not the cheap plastic used in the couch speakers. JBL also is very heavy, made out of some sort of similar dense, thick plastic. So kind of a rule of thumb on speakers is the heavier and the bigger the better. So if you say these two are approximately the same size, we have what seems to be two elements here. This has a port in the back, as opposed to here you can see a woofer and tweeter element and a port. So in terms of size, weight, and architecture, these two are pretty comparable, and it's not really that surprising that they sound about equally good. But I'm going to stick with the JBL as sounding just a tiny bit better. I also like the fact that I can mount that right above where it's sitting, more or less just exactly what it is, except under this shelf. These I could actually mount sideways as well. They have a fairly sophisticated mounting system on the back, but I don't have the hardware for that. And let's see what the hardware is for these. This looks like a standard 1/8 inch screw hole of some kind, so I can work with that. So that's our winner so far. I'm going to pull in a couple of others here at the risk of overdoing it. So let's see what we've got. At this point I've replaced the Sony Cube speakers and the Athena speakers with another two pairs. I've got Optimus, which is a vintage Radio Shack brand, and its match over here. And this is Theater Research, which is the same brand as the subwoofer. These actually came as part of the same set, so in a way they may be kind of the ideal speakers, assuming that the Theater Research people kind of designed that as a system. But we'll find out. So we'll get our music started again. So now we've got the JBL speakers. This is the Optimus. Now the Theater Research. We'll go back and forth between. Here's Optimus. Back to JBL. My impression there was the Optimus sound kind of tinny. The Theater Research actually sound a little better. I've tried out these Optimus quite a lot, and they just really don't sound all that good. They're extremely heavy. Like this is a solid block of aluminum, I think. These are lighter construction plastic. This isn't as dense and thick of plastic maybe as we saw on some of the others, but these still have some weight to them. So that kind of all fits together, that these don't sound quite as good as the JBL, but I think they could be passable. I've looked at the eBay prices for these Optimus. These are kind of dinged up, but ones that are maybe in better shape go for approximately $30 for a pair, and the JBL may go for 60 or more. So let's say they're twice as valuable as used speakers. So these are designed as outdoor speakers. I think that may be kind of a use case. Like I can see putting these on my outdoor porch and not worrying about them getting destroyed by the weather, or hopefully they're waterproof. That may be what all the metal and aluminum is about. The front cover doesn't come off of this in any obvious way. So I think we have our conclusion here, which is these JBLs are the best to go with this subwoofer, and I think I've got a very nice option for a kind of a reasonably high quality sound system here in my workshop area, and I'll be using that to test equipment with in future videos, kind of for nominal testing. I've been using for that purpose. I like them overall, and actually they're good in some ways as a standalone speaker because they go down to a lower frequency, leaving out the subwoofer part of it, even though I believe the system these came with included some powered subwoofer speakers that were about the same size. I've seen those in the thrift store where I bought these. So these still have their purpose, but they're kind of big. They don't fit into my lab setup very well. And the JBLs, I think, I'd originally bought those for, I believe it was $8 each, with the idea that they might have some resale value, and they do, but I think at this profit level, I'm just going to stick with these. Mount them up here under the shelf like I said, and then enjoy them for a long time. So that concludes our video on bookshelf speakers. Thanks for watching, and bye bye.